The stagecoach wheels hit another rut in the dirt road, and Aria Holbrook clutched her carpetbag tighter as laughter erupted from the two women sitting across from her, their eyes mocking as they mimicked her accent in cruel whispers that carried perfectly in the confined space. "Did you hear how she asked for water at the last stop?" the older woman with the severe bun said to her companion. "Va terre," like she cannot even speak proper English. Aria felt heat rise to her cheeks, but kept her gaze fixed on the Arkansas landscape rolling past the dusty window. The year was 1883, and she had traveled halfway across the world from Sweden to reach this place called Eureka Springs, where her late aunt had left her a small boarding house. The journey from New York to Arkansas had been long and exhausting, but nothing compared to the weight of being constantly reminded that she did not belong. "And that dress," the younger woman added with a sniff. "So old-fashioned and strange. Does she think we are peasants in some European village?" Aria's fingers traced the embroidered pattern on her blue traveling dress, the one her mother had made before she died. The needlework was traditional Swedish folk art, something precious and beautiful from home. But here, everything about her seemed wrong. Her accent, her clothes, her ways of doing things. Even the food she had tried to eat at the last coaching inn had drawn stares and whispers. The stagecoach lurched again, and finally the driver called out that they were approaching Eureka Springs. Aria gathered her belongings, relief flooding through her. Perhaps in her own boarding house she could find some peace. Perhaps she could build a life here, even if she would always be the strange foreign woman. The town emerged from the rolling hills like something from a frontier painting. Wooden buildings lined dirt streets, and even from a distance she could hear the sounds of horses, wagons, and people going about their business. The Ozark Mountains rose in the background, covered in thick forests that reminded her a little of home, though the heat was nothing like Sweden. When the stagecoach finally stopped in front of the general store, Aria climbed down carefully, her legs stiff from the long journey. The driver tossed her trunk down without ceremony, and the two women who had mocked her swept past without acknowledgement, their skirts kicking up dust. "You need help with that, miss?" a young boy asked, eyeing her trunk. "Yes, please," Aria said carefully, focusing on each word. "I need to find the boarding house." "The Holbrook house," the boy's eyes widened. "Oh, you are Miss Katerina's niece." Everyone has been wondering who would take over the place. It is just down the street, past the saloon and the doctor's office. He helped her load the trunk onto a small cart and led the way through town. Aria was acutely aware of the stares following her. People stopped their conversations to watch her pass. Some looked curious, others suspicious. She heard whispers but could not make out the words. The boarding house was a two-story wooden structure with a wraparound porch and faded blue shutters. It looked tired but sturdy, and Aria felt a flutter of hope in her chest. This was hers. A place where she could make her own rules, create her own home. She paid the boy with coins that still felt unfamiliar in her hand and climbed the steps to the front door. The key her aunt's lawyer had sent fit perfectly in the lock, and the door swung open to reveal a dim hallway with rooms branching off on either side. Dust covered every surface, and the air smelled stale and closed up. Aria set down her carpetbag and walked through the space slowly. There was a sitting room with worn furniture, a dining room with a large table that could seat 10, and a kitchen in the back that would need serious work. Upstairs, she found 6 small bedrooms and one larger room at the end that must have been her aunt's. That would be hers now. She spent the rest of the day opening windows, sweeping floors, and trying to make the place feel less like a tomb and more like a home. Her arms ached and sweat dampened her dress, but she kept working. Physical labor kept the loneliness at bay. As evening approached, Aria ventured out to the general store to buy supplies. The shopkeeper, a round man with a balding head, looked her up and down with barely concealed skepticism. "You are taking over Katerina's place?" he asked. "Yes, sir. I am her niece, Aria Holbrook." That accent. "You are not from here?" "No, sir. I am from Sweden." He made a non-committal sound and began gathering the items she pointed out. Sugar, flour, coffee, eggs, bacon, beans. Simple things to start. When she tried to ask about fabric for curtains, he seemed irritated by her pronunciation. "Speak up, girl, I cannot understand you." "Fabric," Aria repeated, her face burning. "For the windows." "Oh, fabric, why did you not say so?" He pointed to a corner where bolts of cloth were stacked. "Over there." She selected plain muslin and brought it to the counter. The shopkeeper tallied her purchases with excruciating slowness, as if expecting her to not understand numbers. When she paid exactly the right amount without hesitation, he looked almost disappointed. Carrying her purchases back to the boarding house, Aria passed a group of men standing outside the saloon. Their conversation stopped as she approached. "Well now, what do we have here?" one of them called out. "You are the foreign woman folks have been talking about." "Good evening," Aria said politely, trying to walk past. "Say something else," another man said. "That accent is something strange." "Please excuse me," Aria said, her heart pounding. She walked faster. "You think you can just come here and take over a business?" The first man said, his voice turning harsh. "This is an American town. We do not need your foreign ways." Aria did not look back, but she heard their laughter following her down the street. Her eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. She had survived worse than cruel words. She had survived losing her entire family, crossing an ocean alone, traveling through a country where she barely spoke the language. She could survive this too. That night, she lay in her aunt's old bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of an Arkansas night. Crickets sang in the darkness, and somewhere a dog barked. She thought of her mother's gentle voice, her father's strong hands, the little cottage where she had grown up. All gone now, all lost to fever and bad fortune. This boarding house was all she had left in the world, and she would make it work no matter how many people mocked her. The next morning, Aria woke with the sun and began her work in earnest. The boarding house needed more than surface cleaning. It needed repairs, fresh paint, and a thorough scrubbing from top to bottom. She made a list of everything required and set about tackling what she could manage herself. She was on her knees scrubbing the front porch when a shadow fell across her work. Looking up, she had to shield her eyes against the morning sun to see the man standing at the bottom of the steps. He was tall and lean, dressed in worn denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. A bandana was tied around his neck, and dusty boots suggested he had ridden some distance. When he pushed his hat back, she saw a face weathered by sun and wind, strong features and eyes the color of creek water, somewhere between green and brown. "Morning," he said, his voice a deep drawl. "I heard the Holbrook place was opening up again. You have rooms available?" Aria sat back on her heels, suddenly aware of how she must look, her hair falling out of its bun, her dress damp with cleaning water, her hands red and raw. "I am not open yet," she said carefully. "Maybe in 1 week. I have much work to do first." His expression did not change, but she saw his eyes take in her appearance, her accent, waiting for the judgment, the mockery. 1 week, he said thoughtfully. "Well, that is a problem. I need a place now. The other boarding house in town is full up, and I am tired of sleeping on the ground." "I am sorry," Aria said, starting to stand. "I cannot help you." "Hold on." He raised a hand. "What if I help you with the work? You look like you could use an extra pair of hands, and I am handy with repairs." I will work from my room and board until you are ready to open properly. Then I will pay regular rates like anyone else." Aria hesitated, studying him. His offer seemed genuine, but she had learned to be wary. "Why would you do this?" he shrugged. "Because I need a place to stay and you need help." "Seems like a fair trade to me." He paused, then added, "Name is Russell Everett. I am a ranch hand, just finished a cattle drive up from Texas. Thought I would stay in Eureka Springs for a spell before heading back." "Aria Holbrook," she said. "This was my aunt's boarding house." "I remember Miss Katerina. She was a good woman, fair and honest." He looked at the house, then back at her. "So what do you say? Do we have a deal?" Something in his straightforward manner made Aria want to trust him, and truthfully, she did need help. There were repairs she could not manage alone, and having someone around might make her feel safer in this town where everyone seemed to view her as an unwelcome outsider. "All right," she said finally. "Deal, but I will pay you fairly. This is not charity." "Never said it was." He climbed the steps and held out his hand. "Where do you want me to start?" Over the next several days, Russell proved his worth a dozen times over. He repaired sagging porch boards, fixed a leak in the roof, replaced broken window glass, and helped move furniture. He worked from dawn until dusk, steady and uncomplaining. And unlike everyone else in town, he never mocked her accent or made her feel small. On the third day, they were painting the dining room together when Russell asked, "How long have you been in America?" 3 months, Aria said, carefully applying white paint to the wall. "I arrived in New York in April, then I traveled here. Long journey from Sweden." "Yes, very long. You came alone?" Aria paused, her brush hovering. "Yes, my family, they all died, fever. I had nothing left there, and then I got the letter about my aunt, so I came." "That takes courage," Russell said quietly. "Coming all this way by yourself to a place you have never seen." She looked at him, surprised by the respect in his voice. "Some people say it is foolish. Some people do not know what they are talking about." He moved his ladder to the next section of wall. "I think it is brave. Most folks would not have the grit to do what you did." Something warm bloomed in Aria's chest, a feeling she had not experienced since arriving in America. Acceptance. Maybe even admiration. "The people here," she said hesitantly, "they do not like me. They think I am strange." Russell was quiet for a moment, focusing on his painting. Then he said, "People fear what they do not understand. This is a small town, and most folks here have never been more than 50 miles from where they were born. Someone like you, from halfway around the world with different ways and a different accent, it makes them uncomfortable. But that does not make them right." "It makes everything very hard," Aria admitted. "Even buying supplies, people treat me like I am stupid because I speak differently." "You are not stupid. Anyone who talks to you for 5 minutes can see that." Russell climbed down from his ladder and moved it again. "You are running a business, keeping this place together, working harder than most men I know. That counts for something." Aria felt her eyes grow warm with tears she refused to shed. "Thank you," she said softly. "You are kind, just honest." He glanced at her, and something in his expression made her heart beat faster. "There is nothing wrong with being different, Aria. In fact, I think your difference makes this town more interesting." They worked in comfortable silence after that, but Aria found herself sneaking glances at Russell when he was not looking. He was not like the other men she had encountered in Eureka Springs. There was a quietness to him, a steadiness that made her feel safe. And the way he looked at her, it was not with mockery or suspicion, but with genuine respect. On the 5th day, they went to the lumber yard together to buy wood for new shelves in the kitchen. The man running the yard, a burly fellow with a thick beard, barely acknowledged Aria when she tried to explain what she needed. "I cannot understand a word you are saying," he said impatiently. Speak English or do not waste my time." Before Aria could respond, Russell stepped forward. His voice was calm but carried an edge. "She is speaking English just fine. Maybe the problem is with your hearing." The lumber yard owner's eyes narrowed. "You defending this foreign woman, Everett?" "I am defending someone being treated unfairly," Russell said. "Now, are you going to sell us the lumber or not?" The tension stretched between them like a taut wire. Finally, the owner grunted. "What do you need?" Russell let Aria explain again, and this time the man made an effort to listen. They got the lumber loaded onto a wagon Russell had borrowed and drove back to the boarding house. "You did not have to do that," Aria said as they unloaded the wood. "Yes, I did," Russell said simply. "No one should be treated that way. But now he will think badly of you too." Russell paused, a board balanced on his shoulder, and looked at her directly. "Aria, I do not give a damn what men like that think of me, and neither should you." That night, Aria made dinner for both of them in the newly cleaned kitchen. It was simple food, fried chicken and potatoes and beans, but she set the table carefully and even found a few wildflowers to put in a jar as a centerpiece. Russell washed up at the pump outside and came in looking more presentable, his hair still damp and slicked back. When he saw the table, he stopped. "This looks real nice," he said. "You have worked hard," Aria said. "You deserve a good meal." They sat across from each other, and for the first time since arriving in America, Aria did not feel alone. Russell asked her about Sweden, about her childhood, about the things she missed. He listened carefully to her answers, never interrupting, never making her feel rushed or stupid for her careful English. "The summers there were beautiful," she said, her eyes distant with memory. "We had a small farm, and the fields would fill with flowers, red and yellow and blue, and the light it would stay until very late because we are so far north." "Sounds beautiful," Russell said. "It was," she smiled sadly. "But it is gone now. This is my home. Do you think you will stay?" "In Eureka Springs? I have nowhere else to go," Aria said honestly. "And I have this house. I will make it work." "I am sure you will," Russell said, and the confidence in his voice made her believe it too. After dinner, they sat on the porch as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The evening air was cooling, and crickets were beginning their night song. "Tomorrow is Sunday," Russell said. "I was thinking of riding out to see the springs this town is named for." "Would you like to come?" Aria looked at him in surprise. "You want me to come with you?" "Sure. You have been working non-stop since you got here. You should see some of the countryside. It is real pretty." "I would like that," Aria said, feeling a flutter of something she had not felt in a long time. Anticipation. Maybe even happiness. Sunday dawned clear and warm. Aria dressed in her best day dress, a green cotton print with white buttons, and braided her blonde hair carefully. Russell arrived with 2 horses, one a large bay gelding that was clearly his and the other a smaller chestnut mare. "Borrowed her from the livery," he explained, helping Aria mount. "She is gentle as a kitten." They rode out of town heading west, following a narrow trail into the forested hills. Russell pointed out landmarks, told her the names of the trees and plants they passed. The forest was thick with oak and hickory, and the morning sun filtered through the leaves in dappled patterns. After about an hour, they reached a clearing where a spring bubbled up from the rocks, creating a small pool of crystal-clear water before trickling away into a creek. "This is one of the springs," Russell said, dismounting. "There are dozens of them around here. People say the water has healing properties." Aria climbed down and walked to the edge of the pool. The water was so clear she could see every pebble on the bottom. She knelt and cupped her hands, bringing the cool water to her lips. It tasted clean and fresh, nothing like the well water in town. It is beautiful, she said. Russell stood beside her, looking at the water but seeming to be thinking about something else. Finally, he said, Aria, can I ask you something? Yes. Why do you let those people in town bother you so much? You are smart and capable. Why do you care what they think? Aria was quiet for a moment, trailing her fingers through the water. When you are alone in a strange place, she said slowly, the words of others become very heavy. I know I should not care, but it is hard. Every day someone makes me feel like I do not belong. Like I am less than them because I speak differently. Russell knelt beside her. You are not less than anyone, do you hear me? Not one person in this town is better than you. You really believe that? Aria looked at him, searching his face. I know it. He paused, then added, and I will tell you something else. Your accent, the way you talk, the way you do things different, it does not make you strange. It makes you interesting. It makes you special. Special, Aria repeated, almost laughing at the word. No one has ever called me special before. Then they were not paying attention. Russell's voice was soft, intense. Since I met you, I have been amazed by you. Your strength, your determination, the way you keep going even when people are cruel. And yes, the way you talk, it is beautiful. It is like music, something different from what I hear every day. Aria's breath caught in her throat. The way he was looking at her with such genuine admiration and something deeper, something that made her heart race. Russell, she whispered, not sure what she wanted to say. He reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Your difference makes my world more beautiful, Aria. I want you to know that. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then Russell stood and offered his hand to help her up. They remounted the horses and rode back toward town, but something had shifted. The air between them felt different, more aware, more alive. Over the following weeks, the boarding house transformed. Fresh paint brightened every room, new curtains hung in the windows, and Aria's careful attention made the place shine. Russell continued to stay, helping with the final touches and paying for his room once they officially opened for business. Word spread that the Holbrook boarding house was operating again, and soon they had their first guests. A traveling salesman, a young couple passing through, and an elderly woman visiting relatives. Aria threw herself into being a good hostess, cooking meals, keeping rooms clean, making sure everyone was comfortable. But not everyone in town was happy about her success. One afternoon, Aria was hanging laundry in the backyard when she heard voices from the front of the house. She walked around the corner to find 3 women standing on her porch, their expressions severe. Can I help you? Aria asked. The tallest woman, who Aria recognized as the wife of the mayor, looked down her nose. We are from the Eureka Springs Ladies' Society. We heard you are running a boarding house. Yes, that is correct. We have concerns, another woman said. About the propriety of a foreign woman, unmarried and without family, operating such an establishment. It reflects poorly on our community. Aria felt ice form in her stomach. I am doing nothing wrong. I keep a respectable house. You have a man living here, the mayor's wife said sharply. An unmarried man, living under the same roof as an unmarried woman. It is scandalous. Russell is a boarder just like the others, Aria protested. He pays for his room. Everything is proper. Nothing about this situation is proper, the third woman snapped. You need to close this establishment until you can prove you are a fit person to run it. I have done nothing wrong. Aria's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. I work hard, I follow all the rules, I am a good person. You are foreign trash, the mayor's wife said coldly, and we do not want you here. The words hit like a physical blow. Aria stood frozen, unable to respond, tears threatening to spill over. I think you ladies need to leave. Russell's voice came from behind Aria, hard as stone. The women turned to see him standing in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "This is not your concern, Mr. Everett," the mayor's wife said. "It is absolutely my concern when 3 grown women come to harass someone on her own property." Russell stepped onto the porch, positioning himself beside Aria. "Miss Holbrook runs a respectable establishment. Everyone in town knows it. The only thing improper here is you 3 showing up to insult her." "We are pillars of this community," one woman sputtered. "We have every right to voice our concerns." "No, you are bullies," Russell said flatly, "and you are no longer welcome here. Get off this property." The women exchanged outraged looks, but Russell's expression did not waver. Finally, they turned and walked away, muttering amongst themselves. Once they were gone, Aria felt her legs go weak. She sank down onto the porch steps, her whole body trembling. Russell sat beside her. "Do not let them get to you." "How can I not?" Aria's voice broke. "They will never accept me. No matter what I do, I will always be the foreign woman they can spit on. They do not matter." "Yes, they do." Aria turned to him, tears streaming down her face now. "They are the mayor's wife and her friends. They have power in this town. They can make my life impossible. They can turn everyone against me. I have already lost everything once. I cannot lose this too." Russell took her hands in his calloused palms warm against her skin. "Look at me, Aria." She met his eyes, those creek water eyes that had shown her nothing but kindness. "You are not going to lose this," he said firmly. "I will not let that happen, and you are not alone anymore. You have me." "But for how long?" Aria whispered. "You said you were only staying a spell. Eventually you will leave, go back to Texas, and I will be alone again." Russell was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What if I did not leave?" Aria's heart stuttered. What if I stayed here, in Eureka Springs, with you?" "Russell, you cannot give up your life because of me. I am not giving up anything." He squeezed her hands gently. "Aria, I have been a drifter for 10 years, going from ranch to ranch, town to town, never staying anywhere long. I told myself I liked the freedom, but the truth is I was just lonely. And then I met you, and for the first time in a decade, I did not want to leave. I wanted to stay." "You want to stay?" Aria could barely breathe. "Not just stay in Eureka Springs, stay with you." Russell's voice was rough with emotion. "These past weeks, working beside you, eating meals with you, watching you build something from nothing with your bare hands and pure determination, it has been the happiest I have been in years. Maybe ever. And I know it is fast and maybe it is crazy, but I am falling in love with you, Aria Holbrook." The world seemed to stop. Birds fell silent, the breeze died, even time itself paused. "You love me," Aria whispered. "Yes," Russell said simply. "I love your strength. I love your kindness. I love the way you say my name with that Swedish accent. I love how hard you work and how much you care. I love everything about you." Aria felt tears spill over again, but this time they were not from sadness. "I love you too," she said, the words tumbling out. "I have been so afraid to admit it, even to myself, but I love you, Russell. You make me feel safe and seen and valued. You make me feel like I am enough just as I am." Russell pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and Aria buried her face in his shoulder. For the first time since leaving Sweden, she felt truly home. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other on the porch steps while the afternoon sun moved across the sky. Finally, Russell pulled back just enough to look at her face. "Marry me," he said. Aria's eyes widened. "What?" "Marry me. Let me be your husband. Let me help you run this boarding house and build a life here. Let me stand beside you and tell every person in this town that you are the most incredible woman I have ever met." "Russell, are you sure? Marriage is forever." "I have never been more sure of anything." He cupped her face in his hands. "I want forever with you, Aria, if you will have me. Joy flooded through her, bright and overwhelming. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." Russell grinned, a transformation that made him look years younger, and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise, and Aria felt like she was floating. When they finally pulled apart, Russell said, "We should probably tell people." "Yes," Aria agreed, suddenly nervous. "Your family, do they live nearby?" "No family left," Russell said. "My parents died when I was young. I have been on my own since I was 16. "Then we are both alone," Aria said softly. "Except now we have each other." "Now we have each other," Russell echoed and kissed her again. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church at the edge of town. It was a simple ceremony with few guests. Some of Aria's boarders came, and a handful of people Russell had become friendly with at the saloon. The pastor, an elderly man with kind eyes, performed the service without any judgment about Aria's background. Aria wore a new dress she had sewn herself, a soft blue that matched the Swedish sky from her memories. Russell wore his best clothes, his hair neatly combed, looking handsome and nervous. When they exchanged vows, Aria's voice wavered on the words, her accent more pronounced because of emotion, but Russell smiled at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "I do," she said clearly. "I do," Russell repeated. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Russell pulled Aria close and kissed her thoroughly, to a smattering of applause from their small audience. When they walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, Aria saw some of the same women who had harassed her standing in the back of the church. The mayor's wife looked sour, but Aria did not care. She had Russell, and she had her business, and she had a future. Life settled into a new rhythm after the wedding. Russell officially became co-owner of the boarding house, and his presence made everything easier. He handled difficult guests, did the heavy repairs, and stood as a buffer between Aria and the townspeople who still viewed her with suspicion. But more importantly, he was her partner in every sense of the word. They worked together, made decisions together, and at night they lay together in the big bedroom upstairs, talking about their dreams for the future. "I want to expand," Aria said one evening, her head resting on Russell's chest. "Add more rooms. Maybe open a small restaurant so we are not just feeding boarders but anyone who wants a good meal." "That is a fine idea," Russell said, running his fingers through her loose hair. "We would need to save money for the construction. I know, but I think we could do it." "In a year or two, we could do anything," Russell said. "Together." As the months passed, the boarding house thrived. Word spread that it was clean, comfortable, and well-run. Aria's cooking became known as some of the best in town, and Russell's fair dealing made him respected among the local ranchers and businessmen. Slowly, grudgingly, even some of the people who had been hostile began to soften. One afternoon, a woman came to the boarding house with a small girl in tow. Aria recognized her as one of the ladies' society members who had come to insult her that terrible day. "Mrs. Everett," the woman said stiffly, "my sister is visiting from Little Rock next week. I would like to book a room for her." Aria could have turned her away. Part of her wanted to, but she thought of Russell's words about being the bigger person, about showing them who she really was through her actions. "Of course," Aria said graciously. "We have a lovely room available." "Would you like to see it?" The woman looked surprised by the warm reception but followed Aria upstairs. As they toured the room, the little girl stayed close to her mother, staring at Aria with wide eyes. "Your voice sounds funny," the girl said suddenly. "Hush." The mother scolded, her face flushing red, but Aria knelt down to the girl's level. "I am from a country called Sweden, very far away. That is why I sound different." "Is Sweden pretty?" the girl asked. "Very pretty. with long summers and fields of flowers. Why did you leave? Because sometimes life takes us to new places, and I am happy I came here because I met my husband and made this my home. The girl smiled. I like your voice. It sounds like singing. Aria's throat tightened, out of the mouths of children. Thank you, sweetheart. The mother booked the room and left, but she paused at the door. Mrs. Everett, I owe you an apology for the things I said before. You have proven yourself to be a respectable woman and a good neighbor. I am sorry. It was not much, but it was something. Aria accepted the apology with grace, and after the woman left, she allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. She was winning them over, one person at a time. That winter was harsh, with snow and ice blanketing Eureka Springs. The boarding house became a warm refuge for travelers stranded by the weather. Aria and Russell worked tirelessly to keep everyone comfortable, the fireplace always burning, hot meals always available. One night, a family arrived half-frozen, their wagon having broken an axle on the icy road. The father carried in two small children while the mother stumbled behind, clearly exhausted. Aria immediately set them by the fire, brought blankets and hot soup, and prepared their best room without asking about payment. We do not have much money, the father admitted, but I am a carpenter. I can work to pay our debt. We will figure it out, Russell said easily. Right now, just get your family warm and fed. The family stayed for 3 days while they repaired their wagon and waited for the roads to clear. The carpenter did beautiful work around the boarding house, crafting new shelves and fixing squeaky doors. When they finally left, the mother hugged Aria tightly. You are an angel, she said. We will never forget your kindness. After they were gone, Russell found Aria standing at the window, watching the snow fall. You are thinking about something, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. I am thinking about how strange life is, Aria said. A year ago, I was completely alone, terrified, convinced I would never belong anywhere. And now I have you and this business, and I actually helped people today. Real people who needed us. You help people every day, Russell said. You just do not always see it. Aria turned in his arms to face him. I am happy, Russell, truly happy. I did not think that would ever be possible again. I am happy too, he kissed her forehead. Happier than I ever imagined I could be. That spring, Aria discovered she was pregnant. The realization came slowly at first, the subtle changes in her body easy to dismiss. But when the nausea started and her monthly courses stopped, she knew. She waited to tell Russell until she was certain, wanting to be sure before sharing the news. She chose an evening after they had closed up the boarding house for the night. They were sitting on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. Russell, I have something to tell you, Aria said, her heart pounding. He looked at her, immediately attentive. What is it? I am going to have a baby. For a moment, Russell just stared at her. Then a slow smile spread across his face, growing until he was grinning like a fool. A baby, we are going to have a baby. Yes, Aria said, laughing at his expression. In the fall, I think. Russell whooped and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. When he set her down, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. A baby, he said wonderingly. Our baby. Are you happy? Aria asked, though she could see the answer written all over his face. Happy does not even begin to cover it. Russell placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. This is everything, Aria. You are everything. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer. Aria continued working in the boarding house, though Russell became increasingly protective, insisting she not lift heavy objects or work too hard. As her belly grew round and obvious, even more of the townspeople warmed to her. There was something about an expectant mother that softened hearts. The mayor's wife actually stopped by one afternoon with a basket of knitted baby clothes. "My daughters have outgrown these," she said brusquely. "Thought you might have use for them." It was the closest thing to a peace offering Aria could expect, and she accepted it graciously. "Thank you. This is very kind." After the woman left, Aria examined the tiny garments, marveling at how small they were. In a few months, her child would wear these. Her and Russell's child. It still seemed like a miracle. In late September, as the leaves began to turn gold and red, Aria went into labor. It was evening, and they had just finished serving dinner to their current boarders when the first pain hit, stealing her breath. Russell saw her face go pale and was at her side instantly. "Is it time?" "I think so," Aria gasped as another contraction rolled through her. Russell sent one of the boarders running for the doctor while he helped Aria upstairs. The next hours were a blur of pain and effort. The doctor arrived and took charge, his calm presence reassuring. Russell held Aria's hand through it all, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, telling her she was doing wonderfully, never leaving her side. As dawn light began to filter through the windows, Aria gave a final push and heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby's cry. "It is a boy," the doctor announced, placing the squalling infant on Aria's chest. "A healthy baby boy." Aria looked down at her son, at his tiny red face and waving fists, and felt love so fierce it took her breath away. Russell leaned over them both, his face a picture of wonder and joy. "He is perfect," Russell whispered. "Absolutely perfect." They named him Eric after Aria's father, Eric Russell Everett. He was a good baby, healthy and strong, with his mother's blonde hair and his father's creek water eyes. The boarding house had to adjust to the new addition. Aria found ways to work with a baby on her hip, and Russell learned to change diapers and heat bottles. Their boarders cooed over little Eric, and the whole atmosphere of the house seemed brighter with a child in it. One afternoon, when Eric was about 6 months old and beginning to smile and babble, Aria was in the kitchen making bread while Russell played with the baby on the floor. A knock at the back door interrupted them. Aria opened it to find an older Mexican woman standing there, looking tired and uncertain. "Please, Senora," the woman said in heavily accented English. "I am looking for work. I can cook, clean, so I am a good worker." Aria saw something of herself in this woman, the uncertainty in her eyes, the way she held herself as if expecting rejection. "Come in," Aria said warmly. "Sit down. Would you like some coffee?" The woman looked surprised but accepted. As they talked, Aria learned her name was Rosa, that she had come north with her husband seeking work, but he had died in a mining accident. Now she was alone and desperate for employment. "I am not sure I have enough work for a full-time employee," Aria said honestly. "But I could use help a few days a week, especially with the baby, and I could give you a room here in exchange." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "You would do this for me, a stranger." "You are not a stranger. You are someone who needs help, and I remember what that feels like." Aria reached across the table and squeezed Rosa's hand. "We all need help sometimes." Russell, who had been listening while keeping Eric entertained, nodded his approval. "Welcome to the boarding house, Rosa." Rosa became part of their little family. She was an excellent cook and had a gentle way with Eric that made Aria comfortable leaving him in her care. More than that, Rosa's presence meant Aria had a friend, someone who understood what it was like to be foreign, to be other, to have to fight for acceptance every single day. The two women would sit together in the evenings after the work was done, sharing stories from their homelands, teaching each other phrases in Swedish and Spanish, finding comfort in their unlikely friendship. As Eric grew from a baby to a toddler, the boarding house continued to prosper. Russell's idea to add a restaurant turned out to be brilliant. They expanded the dining room and began serving meals to anyone who wanted them, not just boarders. Aria's cooking drew people from all over town, and even the ladies' society members had to admit that the Everett establishment was an asset to Eureka Springs. When Eric was 2 years old, Aria found herself pregnant again. This time the news was met with excited anticipation rather than nervous joy. They knew what to expect now, felt ready for another child. Their daughter was born on a spring morning, arriving so quickly that the doctor almost did not make it in time. She was smaller than Eric had been, with dark hair like Russell's and a lusty cry that suggested she would be a force to be reckoning with. "What should we name her?" Russell asked, cradling his daughter gently. "What about Alina?" Aria suggested. "It was my mother's middle name." "Alina Everett," Russell tested the name. "I like it." Alina was indeed a force. Where Eric had been an easy baby, Alina was demanding and opinionated from the start. She knew what she wanted and made sure everyone around her knew it too. But she was also affectionate and bright, and Eric adored his little sister. Life became busier with 2 children and a thriving business. Aria and Russell hired additional help, including a young man to assist with maintenance and a girl from town to help with serving meals in the restaurant. The boarding house was no longer just Aria's aunt's old place, but one of the most successful establishments in Eureka Springs. One summer evening, when Eric was 5 and Alina was 3, the family took a walk into town to see a traveling show that had set up in the main square. There were jugglers and musicians and a man who swallowed fire. The children were entranced, and Aria and Russell stood with their arms around each other, watching their son and daughter's faces light up with wonder. "You know," Russell said quietly, "sometimes I think about that first day I knocked on your door, how close I came to just moving on to the next town." "I am glad you did not," Aria said. "Me too." He kissed the top of her head. "You changed my whole life, Aria. Gave me a home, a purpose, a family, everything I never knew I needed." "You did the same for me," Aria said. "When everyone else saw someone strange and foreign, you saw me, the real me, and you loved me anyway." "Not anyway," Russell corrected gently. "I loved you because of who you are. Every part of you, including the parts that make you different." They stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors, their children laughing nearby, and Aria felt a sense of peace so profound it brought tears to her eyes. She had come so far from that frightened girl on the stagecoach, enduring mockery and believing she would never belong. She had built a life, a family, a place in this world through sheer determination and the love of a good man who saw her worth when no one else did. Years continued to pass. Eric and Alina grew, the boarding house thrived, and Aria and Russell's love only deepened. They had their challenges, of course. There were difficult years when business was slow, illnesses that scared them, conflicts with townspeople who still harbored prejudices. But they faced everything together, united in their commitment to each other and their family. When Eric was 10, he asked his mother to teach him Swedish. "I want to know where you came from," he said earnestly. "I want to understand that part of me." Aria was moved to tears. She began teaching both children her native language, sharing stories of Sweden, of her childhood, of the family they had never met. Russell would sit and listen, learning alongside his children, determined that this part of Aria's heritage would not be lost. By the time Eric was 15 and Alina 13, the boarding house had expanded again. They had added a wing with 8 more rooms and turned the restaurant into a proper dining establishment with a reputation that extended throughout the region. Aria's Swedish meatballs and lingonberry desserts were particularly famous, her foreign cooking no longer a source of mockery but of pride. The mayor himself, the husband of the woman who had once called Aria foreign trash, came to apologize one afternoon. "Mrs. Everett," he said, hat in hand, "I owe you an acknowledgement. When you first came to Eureka Springs, my wife and I were among those who treated you poorly. We were wrong. You have become one of the most respected citizens in this town, and you deserve recognition for all you have contributed." Aria accepted his words with grace, though privately she thought the apology came about 15 years too late. Still, it was a sign of how much had changed, how thoroughly she had proven herself. That evening, she and Russell sat on the porch as they had so many times before, watching the sunset paint the Arkansas sky. "The mayor apologized to me today," Aria said. "Did he now?" Russell's tone suggested he had about as much respect for the mayor as Aria did. "It made me think about how different everything is now. When I first arrived, I was so alone, so afraid. I genuinely believed I would never be accepted here. And now I realize acceptance is not something that was ever theirs to give," Aria said thoughtfully. "I do not need their approval to know my worth. I know who I am, what I have built, what I have survived. Their acceptance is nice, but it is not necessary for my happiness." Russell smiled. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." Aria leaned against him. "You taught me that my difference was not a weakness. That being from somewhere else, speaking with an accent, having different ways, none of that made me less. It made me more." "Your difference makes my world more beautiful," Russell said, echoing the words he had spoken so many years ago by the spring. "That has always been true, and it will always be true." As twilight deepened into night, their children came out to join them. Eric, now taller than his mother, sat on the porch railing while Alina curled up in the chair next to Aria. They talked about nothing and everything, the easy conversation of a family comfortable with each other. "Tell us about when you first met," Alina demanded, as she had 100 times before. She never tired of hearing the story. So Russell and Aria recounted it again, the details worn smooth with repetition but no less meaningful. They talked about the boarding house in desperate need of repair, the deal they had struck, the way they had worked side by side and slowly fallen in love. "And then the Ladies' Society came and was horrible to Mama," Alina said, always particularly incensed by this part of the story. "But Papa stood up for her," Eric added, "and told them they were bullies." "He did," Aria confirmed, smiling at her husband. "He always stood up for me, even when it would have been easier not to." "That is what you do when you love someone," Russell said simply. "You stand beside them, you fight for them, you see them for who they truly are and celebrate them." It was a lesson their children took to heart. Eric grew up to be a young man who respected everyone regardless of their background. Alina developed a fierce sense of justice and a protective streak a mile wide. They were good people, raised by parents who had taught them that differences should be celebrated, not feared. The years rolled on. Eric married a schoolteacher named Margaret and gave Aria and Russell 3 grandchildren. Alina became a nurse and shocked everyone by choosing to remain unmarried, dedicated to her work helping people. The boarding house passed its 20th anniversary, then its 25th. Aria and Russell grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces lined with the marks of lives well lived. But their love never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger, tempered by decades of partnership and mutual respect. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Russell took Aria back to the spring where he had first told her he loved her. It was a warm June day and the forest was lush and green. The spring still bubbled up clear and cold, unchanged by the passage of time. "You remember what I told you here?" Russell asked as they sat beside the water. You said my difference made your world more beautiful, Aria recalled. It was the first time anyone had ever made me feel like my foreignness was something good. It was good. It is good. Russell took her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. 30 years, and I have never once regretted marrying you. You are still the most incredible woman I have ever known. Even with all my Swedish stubbornness, Aria teased. Especially with your Swedish stubbornness, he laughed. You would not be you without it. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the water, remembering all they had been through together. The struggles and the triumphs, the sorrows and the joys. A life fully lived, fully shared. What do you think your younger self would say if she could see us now? Russell asked. Aria considered the question. I think she would be amazed. That frightened girl on the stagecoach, enduring mockery and convinced she would always be an outsider. I do not think she could have imagined this. A successful business, a family, respect in the community, a love that has lasted 3 decades. You built all of that, Russell said. With your own 2 hands and your determination. We built it, Aria corrected. Together. As the sun began to set, they made their way back to town, to the boarding house that had been the foundation of everything they had created. Their children and grandchildren were waiting there, having planned a surprise anniversary celebration. The dining room was decorated with flowers and ribbons. There was a feast laid out, and all their friends and neighbors had come to celebrate with them. Even some of the people who had once been hostile were there, genuinely happy to honor the Everetts. Speeches were made, toasts were given. Eric talked about how his parents had shown him what true partnership looked like. Alina spoke about their unwavering commitment to helping others. The mayor gave a formal recognition of Aria and Russell's contributions to Eureka Springs. But the moment that meant the most to Aria came when her oldest grandchild, a serious boy of 12 named Thomas, stood up. I want to say something about my grandmother, Thomas said in his clear young voice. She came to this country alone, not speaking the language very well, and everyone was mean to her because she was different. But she did not give up. She worked hard and she was kind, and she proved that being different is not bad, it is special. My grandmother taught me that we should never judge people for where they come from or how they talk. We should judge them by what is in their hearts, and grandmother has the biggest heart of anyone I know. Aria was crying openly by the time he finished, as were several other people in the room. Russell put his arm around her and she leaned into him, overwhelmed with gratitude for this life they had built. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Aria and Russell stood on their porch one last time. 30 years, Aria mused. It seems like forever and also like no time at all. I want 30 more, Russell said, and 30 after that. That would make us very old, Aria pointed out with a smile. I do not care. I want every moment with you I can get. Aria turned to face him, placing her hands on his chest. You know what I realized today? That you were right, all those years ago. About what? About difference making the world more beautiful. I spent so long thinking my accent and my foreign ways were flaws, things to be ashamed of or hidden, but they were part of what made me who I am. They were part of what brought me here to you, to this life. If I had been just like everyone else, maybe we never would have found each other. We would have found each other, Russell said with certainty. Somehow, someway, you are my person, Aria, my partner, my love. Accent or no accent, Swedish or American, we were meant to be together. I believe that too, Aria whispered. They kissed, a soft, gentle kiss that held 30 years of love and devotion. Then they went inside, to the home they had built together, surrounded by evidence of the life they had created. The boarding house continued to operate for many more years. Eric eventually took over the management, running it with the same integrity his parents had shown. Aria and Russell retired from the day-to-day work, but remained involved, offering advice and help when needed. They grew old together in the truest sense. Their lives intertwined so completely that neither could imagine existence without the other. They took walks together, worked in the garden Russell had planted years ago, played with their grandchildren, and spent long evenings talking about everything and nothing. When Russell was 72, he took ill suddenly one winter. It was pneumonia, the doctor said, serious but treatable. Aria nursed him devotedly, barely leaving his side. Eric and Alina came to help, but it was Aria who Russell wanted with him constantly. "You are going to recover," Aria told him firmly one afternoon as she spooned broth into him. "We still have so much living to do." "I know," Russell said, though his voice was weak. "I am not going anywhere without you." And true to his word, he recovered. By spring he was up and walking again, thinner and frailer than before, but still himself. They celebrated his recovery with a family dinner, everyone crowded around the big table, laughing and talking over each other. "You scared us, grandfather," Alina's oldest daughter said. "Scared myself too," Russell admitted, "but I had too much to live for to give up." He looked at Aria as he said it, and she felt her heart swell with love so strong it was almost painful. After all these years, he still looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. They had 5 more good years together after that scare. Years filled with family gatherings and quiet moments, with grandchildren graduating school and getting married and having children of their own. Aria and Russell became great-grandparents, marveling at how their love had created this entire tree of descendants. "When I first came to America," Aria said one evening as they watched the sun set, "I thought I had lost everything. My family, my home, my whole world. I could not imagine ever being happy again. And now," Russell prompted, "now I have everything. A new family, a new home, a new world. Built from nothing but determination and the love of a good man who saw me when no one else did." Russell brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I am the lucky one, Aria. You made my life mean something. Before you, I was just drifting, existing but not really living. You gave me purpose and joy and love beyond measure." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, the kind of peaceful quiet only possible between two people who had spent a lifetime together. Russell passed away in his sleep at the age of 81. It was peaceful, gentle, the kind of death everyone hopes for. Aria was beside him, holding his hand, and she said later that she felt the moment his spirit left, felt the absence of him like a physical thing. The grief was overwhelming. After 53 years together, losing Russell felt like losing part of herself. But Aria was not alone in her sorrow. Her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren surrounded her, supporting her through the darkest days. At the funeral, people came from all over to pay their respects. Russell Everett had been loved and admired throughout Eureka Springs and beyond. Person after person told Aria how much her husband had meant to them, stories of his kindness and fairness and integrity. But it was Eric who spoke at the service, his voice steady despite his tears. "My father taught me what it means to be a good man. He showed me that real strength is in being gentle, that real courage is in standing up for what is right even when it is hard. He loved my mother with a devotion that was absolute and unwavering, and their love was the foundation that our entire family was built on. He will be missed beyond measure, but his legacy lives on in all of us." After the funeral, Aria went back to the boarding house that had been the center of her life for so many decades. Eric and Alina wanted her to come stay with one of them, but she refused. "This is my home," she said simply. "Mine and your father's. I am not leaving it." So she stayed, and slowly learned to live in a world without Russell. It was hard, harder than anything except losing her first family all those years ago in Sweden. But she had people who loved her, a life that still had meaning, and memories of a love that had been true and deep and lasting. She began writing down her story, wanting her descendants to know where they came from and what she had survived. She wrote about leaving Sweden alone and afraid, about arriving in Eureka Springs to mockery and hostility. She wrote about the day a cowboy knocked on her door and offered to help, and how that simple act had changed everything. She wrote about learning to love again after loss, about building a business and a family against all odds. She wrote about the cruelty she had faced and the kindness that had saved her. But mostly she wrote about Russell, about the man who had looked past her accent and foreign ways to see her true self. "Your difference makes my world more beautiful," she wrote, recording those precious words. That is what he told me, and that is what he proved every day of our marriage. He taught me that being different is not something to apologize for or hide. It is something to celebrate, because our differences are what make each of us unique and valuable. Aria lived another 8 years after Russell passed. She remained sharp and engaged until the end, spending time with her family, still offering advice on running the boarding house, still tending Russell's garden. She spoke often of him, keeping his memory alive through stories and reminiscences. When she finally passed at the age of 87, it was peacefully in her sleep, just as Russell had gone. Her family mourned deeply, but also celebrated a life remarkably well lived. At her funeral, the church was packed with people whose lives she had touched over the decades. Elena stood to speak this time, her voice strong despite her tears. "My mother was the strongest person I ever knew. She came to this country with nothing but determination and built an incredible life through sheer will and hard work. She faced prejudice and cruelty, but never let it make her bitter or mean. Instead, she met hatred with kindness, ignorance with patience, and fear with courage. She taught us that where we come from matters less than who we choose to be, and that love is the most powerful force in the world. She and my father had a love story for the ages, and now they are together again." Aria was buried beside Russell in the Eureka Springs Cemetery, under a simple stone that read Aria Holbrook Everett, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, born in Sweden, made her home in Arkansas. Her difference made the world more beautiful. The boarding house continued to operate for 2 more generations, run by Eric's children and then his grandchildren. It became a landmark in Eureka Springs, known not just for its accommodations but for its history. The story of Aria and Russell was told and retold, becoming part of local legend. A photograph hung in the main hallway, showing Aria and Russell on their 50th wedding anniversary. They stood with arms around each other, both gray-haired and lined, but their love evident in every detail of the image. The way he looked at her, the way she leaned into him, the absolute contentment in both their faces. Beneath the photograph was a plaque with an excerpt from Aria's written memoir, the words she had considered most important to pass down. "I came to America afraid and alone. I was mocked for my accent, scorned for my foreign ways, made to feel less than human because I was different. But then I met a man who saw my difference not as a flaw, but as a gift. He taught me that what makes us unique is what makes us valuable. He stood beside me when it would have been easier to walk away, loved me when others only offered hate, and built a life with me that exceeded my wildest dreams. If my story teaches anything, let it be this: do not let anyone make you ashamed of who you are. Your differences, your struggles, your unique perspective on the world, these are not weaknesses. They are strengths. And somewhere out there is someone who will look at you and see not strangeness but beauty. Hold on to that person. build a life with them, and never forget that love, real love, sees past surfaces to the soul beneath. Those words resonated through the generations. Aria's descendants grew up knowing the story of their great-great-grandmother who crossed an ocean and built an empire from nothing, who faced hatred with grace and found love in the most unexpected place. They learned from her example that perseverance and kindness and courage can overcome almost any obstacle. The boarding house itself eventually closed when Eureka Springs underwent development in the late 20th century. But the building was preserved as a historic site, a testament to the woman who had made it her home and the legacy she had created. Tours were given, telling the story of Aria and Russell Everett, the Swedish immigrant and the cowboy who had defied expectations and built something beautiful together. And sometimes, late at night when the building was quiet and empty, staff members swore they could feel a presence there. Not frightening, but comforting. The sense of two souls who had loved the place so much in life that something of them remained even after death. A whisper of Swedish accented English, the echo of a deep male laugh, the feeling of being watched over by benevolent spirits. Whether it was true or simply imagination fueled by a romantic story, it spoke to the power of what Aria and Russell had created. Their love had been so strong, so foundational, that it had literally built an institution that outlasted them by generations. Every person who stayed in that boarding house, every meal served in that dining room, every life touched by the Everett family, it all traced back to one simple truth. A frightened Swedish immigrant and a kind cowboy had seen past surfaces to souls, had chosen love over fear, had built a life together brick by brick and day by day. And in doing so, they had proven that our differences do not divide us. When met with love and understanding, our differences enrich us. They make the world more beautiful, more interesting, more complete. That was the legacy Aria and Russell left behind. Not just a successful business or a large family, but a lesson about the transformative power of acceptance and love. In a time and place where being different could mean facing cruelty and isolation, they had created a sanctuary where everyone was welcome, where being foreign or strange or unusual was not a liability but an asset. The town of Eureka Springs itself changed over the decades. The frontier roughness gave way to civilization, then to modernization. But the story of Aria and Russell remained a constant, told in schools and written about in local histories. They became symbols of what the American West could be at its best, a place where people from all backgrounds could build new lives, where determination and character mattered more than birthplace or accent. And perhaps most importantly, their story became a beacon for others who felt lost and alone. Over the years, countless people visited the preserved boarding house or read about Aria's life and found hope in her example. If she could survive being mocked and isolated, if she could build a life from nothing in a hostile environment, if she could find love and happiness despite every obstacle, then maybe they could too. That is the true measure of a life well lived, not in wealth accumulated or fame achieved, but in the ripples of inspiration and hope left behind. Aria and Russell Everett created those ripples, and they spread outward through time, touching lives they would never know, giving courage to strangers they would never meet. In the end, the cowboy had been right. Aria's difference had made his world more beautiful. But more than that, it had made the whole world a little more beautiful, a little more kind, a little more willing to see past surfaces to the human heart's beating beneath. And that legacy, built on love and acceptance and the courage to be yourself even when the world says you should not, That legacy would endure as long as there were people willing to listen to the story and take its lessons to heart. The story of Aria and Russell Everett was not just a tale of the Old West. It was a timeless reminder that love sees what others miss, that kindness is stronger than cruelty, and that the things that make us different are often the very things that make us extraordinary. Their love story proved that when one person is brave enough to celebrate another's uniqueness rather than condemn it, miracles can happen. Lives can be transformed. Legacies can be built that last for generations. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, two souls walked hand in hand, their love as strong and true as it had been in life, their story continuing in ways the living could only imagine but deeply hope for. Because if love like that could survive mockery and prejudice, and even death itself, then maybe, just maybe, love really was the most powerful force in existence. And that thought gave comfort to every lonely heart who heard their story and dared to hope that they too might find someone who would look at them and say, "Your difference makes my world more beautiful."